Hey, we've got a brand new patch. I'll be showing you the before and after changes, discussing the Epoch spread improvements, and whether they make a difference. We'll also cover a strange fix for the war pack that I thought wasn't necessary, and we'll go over some general bug fixes. Plus, there's even more to cover. If you enjoyed the content, please show some love by hitting the like button below the video. I'd really appreciate it. Let's get started. Okay, Helldivers, we've got a brand new patch that just dropped today, and we're going to go over all of the changes, starting with the weapons, stratagems, and booster section. So, what has changed? Well, thankfully, the Class 45 Epoch has received a spread improvement. Some would call it a buff, others would call it a correction, basically a bug. Nevertheless, in the patch notes, Arrowhead has confirmed they've improved the Class 45 Epoch spread. So previously, the projectile would veer off to either the far right, far left, basically in any direction, making it inaccurate and somewhat annoying to handle. In the new patch, we can tell there's a big difference. The projectile is much more accurate and isn't as bad as it once was. At this point, you might be asking yourself, why call it a buff? Well, the answer is simple. We know that previously, someone on Reddit confirmed the Epoch spread stats were set at 150 for horizontal and 100 for vertical, which is why the spread was off. They've improved the spread by adjusting the stats properly. I don't know the current stats yet, but I thought I'd explain that it wasn't a bug per se, it was just some strange numbers set previously. Either way, I'm sure you're excited about it. I think it could use a few more improvements, such as giving it the same charge mechanic as the railgun, so we can hurt larger enemies with the Epoch without charging it to the very top of the red to inflict higher armor penetration. For example, with the railgun, I can charge it almost to the red to defeat one Hulk, compared to the Epoch where you have to charge it all the way to the red to dish out enough damage to defeat one Hulk. The second change they've made is with the laser turret. Previously, the laser turret wasn't properly displaying the heat buildup, and to some degree, you wouldn't know if it was about to overheat. To give an example of the charge before the patch, there was no way to tell if it was going to overheat because of the faulty heat display. After the patch, it's easy to see how hot it's getting. I will say that it's a cool change. However, at the same time, I don't know how this will help beyond knowing when to get out of the way before it overheats and potentially sets you on fire. What I'd like to see is a way to go up to the laser turret and turn it off right as it's about to overheat, or at least be able to activate a safe mode so that when it reaches its boiling point, it stops targeting enemies. I think a change like that would make the laser turret more fun and way more useful than just waiting for it to overheat. Up next, number 3, they've made 3 changes to the lift 182 warp pack. The first is that you can no longer see the warp effect in first person mode. No big deal there. The second change, I believe, wasn't really necessary. They've made it impossible to use the lift 182 warp pack while inside the Pelican. This means you can no longer troll your friends or have fun by warping out of the Pelican as it extracts, as you can see in the before and after video clip. If you were to ask me if I think it was an issue, I would say I don't think it was a problem, unless it somehow caused issues with the game that we're not aware of. If so, then I suppose that makes sense as to why they patched it. But if there isn't a problem, then at that point I think it wasn't a necessary fix. Nevertheless, the third and final change they've made to the warp pack is that they've corrected the desync bug. Previously, if you warped out of the fast recon vehicle, this would cause a desync, essentially letting you run around in stealth mode where enemies couldn't detect you. You could also hit your teammates without them knowing what was going on, and you could roam freely without being attacked by enemies, as you can see before the patch. After the patch, when warping, the issue has been resolved. You'll no longer desync, so you'll be detectable by enemies and teammates once again. Lastly, for weapons, stratagems, and boosters, the developers have addressed a common problem with the Pacifier. When using this weapon previously, if you fired and reloaded, there was a slight delay. This is no longer a bug and has been officially resolved. Continuing on, we've got an enemy path-in issue corrected in the newest patch. By the way, if you don't know what was going on, sometimes, if not all the time, enemies like Terminids wouldn't be able to reach where you were standing, or they would essentially get stuck in one place, unable to move around correctly. The developers have stated that enemy navigations in cities specifically wasn't able to traverse properly, and this bug has since been corrected. Now, if you go into a city, you should see enemies moving around easily, able to locate where you are, and they shouldn't get stuck or confused about where to move next. Speaking of next, we've got crash fixes. The developers have stated they've resolved an issue where the game would crash when enemies despawn. I'm sure you've seen this happen at some point. You're getting attacked, and once the enemy has shredded you to pieces, it disappears. That's completely normal. However, the game crashing when this happens was not normal, of course, and that bug has been patched. This second crash fix is an exciting one because it's been happening for ages, or at least it feels like it. And what is it? The customization menu crash has officially been resolved. Prior to this patch, if you changed anything in customization, the game would ultimately crash, as I just stated a few seconds ago. This is no longer an issue. At least from my testing, when I was messing around trying to attach and change things, I didn't notice any crashing, but feel free to comment below this video if you're still experiencing issues with the Armory's customization menu. Finally, for crash fixes, the third bug wasn't something I was aware of, and apparently Helldivers 2 would crash if you were taken out of action by an explosion. All in all, that's pretty much all you need to know about the crashing issues. Hopefully they're planning to release another patch in the near future to address some of the other crashing bugs that weren't listed. If you've recently experienced an issue that wasn't mentioned here, post a response below. I'd like to know, and I'll also check it out. Maybe I'll even respond to a few. Moving along, we've not only got crash fixes, but we've also got miscellaneous fixes to go over. Starting with the first bug, apparently there was an issue where some players weren't able to access items tied to either DLC or war bonds. Interesting. I recall going over a support team's question about how some of you out there were not able to use any DLC, whether that was their pre-order skins, Super Citizen Edition, or whatever the case may be, right? At the time, they said it was due to players using family sharing, whether on PC or console, and it seemed that was true. However, at the same time, it wasn't, as we can tell. The developers have addressed a bug here, confirming there was a problem after all. With that said, this should have corrected any problems you were having before this patch. The next bug was with emotes that would sometimes cause your Helldiver to essentially snap their torso, which would then allow you to emote with your back facing your front legs. By the way, I have to say it was quite horrifying to see, and also a funny bug. So nothing too serious when it comes to fixes there. The final miscellaneous fix is another one that's not a big problem either, but there were instances where you couldn't laugh while in the Super Destroyer for whatever reason, and that's been resolved as well. I think the most important bug on this list was the issue with the DLC and war bonds, so that's awesome to see it finally patched. With the patch notes out of the way, how about we now go over a developer's post on the official Helldivers Discord. A Helldiver, aka a player, asked a few questions, such as how many devs and staffs work on enemies, along with some other questions. So Yusuf, an Arrowhead developer, replied to inform this Helldiver that there are 2 teams working on enemies. He went on to say that they design enemies in a way that lives up to the central theme and idea, meaning if an enemy can one-tap Helldivers, it most likely will before they consider things like complexity, difficulty, or balance. He also spoke about how the team tries to deliver moments and experiences we've seen in movies and books in a non-scripted manner, and they work hard to live up to that vision. When it comes to weapons and enemies, these are designed with that in mind. He also had some other things to say at the very bottom of this post. If you're basically were wondering the same thing about how they design enemies and how many teams work on enemies in general, then hopefully that answers your question and you found this part helpful. we're now going to sort of talk about something that's unrelated to Helldivers 2, but I think it's well worth bringing up. If you're a fan of Sony games, you know, PlayStation in general, then you might want to know about this. Nate the Hate 2, which is an insider, has informed everyone that basically there's going to be more Sony games coming to Xbox, which is probably not a surprise at this point, right? There's been the announcement recently about Helldivers 2 coming to Xbox, as well as some other games. But this right here is very interesting. Very interesting. I wonder what else will be coming to Xbox from PlayStation. Can we officially announce that, you know, console wars is officially dead? I think so at this point. But I'd like to know your thoughts on this. What do you think will be coming from Sony or from PlayStation to Xbox? If you have any ideas, any speculations, let me know. Let's have a great conversation about it. Anywho, we're now going to go over the top 3 comments as always. So first off, we've got Averin Jones 9980 that talked about how laser cannons can one-snipe us or one-shot us across the map and told us to be careful for what we wish for. And yeah, it's true. I think what would be great about it if they were to introduce snipers is, again, like I mentioned in that video, is to have some sort of line that is aimed at us. So if it's green, that means you're okay, you're safe. But when it goes from green, yellow to red, red would be the shot. That would give you a chance to dodge it, essentially. I think that would make things a little bit better. The second top comment is by Draknor353. If I'm pronouncing your name right, I appreciate you that you're subscribed. And you talk about melee slots, something you want soon. And yeah, it makes sense. I mean, absolutely. How come we don't have one? It doesn't make any sense. I'd rather be able to have my primary, secondary, and then pull out my melee whenever I need it. It makes sense. It absolutely does. The third and final comment is by another subscriber named Justin J. Small that talked about some insane bugs in game, basically where certain side objectives don't count when you've completed them. I don't know if I've seen this yet, or if it's happened to me. If anyone has had this happen to them, if I could talk, let me know in the comments. I'd love to know, because I need to know if it's a common issue or if it's rare. Let me know. With that being said, hope you have enjoyed the video. If you can, show some love by tapping the like button, only if you found the video helpful. I don't want you to tap it if you didn't think it was helpful by any means. But also consider subscribing, turn on notifications, and all that great stuff. And I'd like to always give everyone a shout out from the subscribers, members, and lurkers. Yes, the lurkers out there. You're watching the channel, you're not subscribed, but you definitely check out the channel, and I appreciate you. So thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.